technology and design of leisure technologies. Professor Brown previously worked as the research director of the Mobile Life Research Center until 2017, and as an associate professor in the Department of Communication at the University of California. I'm looking very much to learn more about the halting problem when self-driving cars stop in traffic.
Hello, thank you for that. So I get to talk today about one of my favourite subjects, which is driving. So I've been studying driving and what we do with roads for maybe like 20 years now, actually. And back when I started looking at it, there wasn't much computer science in cars. Maybe you had one of these, do you remember these TomTom units that you'd plug into the cigarette lighter socket, or maybe there's a kind of engine management system. But nowadays, our cars are, well, they're basically smartphones on wheels, aren't they? They've got these big screens, and along with that, there's this exciting possibility that we might have self-driving cars soon. And I'm particularly interested in this because I am a completely abysmal driver. And this is my main interest in driving is, can I invent technologies that will stop me killing people on the road or potentially killing myself? Unfortunately, the whole self-driving car thing is actually kind of, it's got stuck in a jam, as the economists put it. And actually, someone like Chris Urmson, so he actually founded Google's self-driving car division, really gifted computer scientist. He used to talk about how his young son wouldn't need a driving license, and now he talks about it being sort of 30 to 50 years away. Not so good for Google, but great for researchers like us. It means we've got a career ahead of us here. If that's not worrying enough, there's also this kind of, you might have seen some of the media reports or heard of the incidents where self-driving cars have caused trouble and even caused fatalities in traffic. And these cars are being tested mainly in the US and China, but they're being tested on our roads quite widely. So this is potentially a cause for some concern. Now, as somebody who studies kind of road interaction, I've been kind of tracking a little bit these kind of advent of these self-driving cars in different ways, and I was kind of a little bit sort of sad one day because I kind of realized that a lot of the data on how these cars are doing is locked up in these car companies. It's locked up in companies like Waymo or Cruise. And although I have friends in these companies that were like, we're not going to give you your data. It's our data. We're not going to let you look at these kind of things. And I was sort of scrolling through YouTube videos of these self-driving cars being kind of driven, and I thought, could I actually use data from YouTube? Because it turns out there's like thousands of videos of these cars interacting in traffic. And so this year I've been trying to kind of see if I can kind of do a systematic approach to this kind of data, and although it's obviously kind of quite wild data, quite uncontrolled, it does give us this little chance to look at what's going on with self-driving cars, with what companies like Cruise or Waymo or Tesla would give us access to. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about this kind of first little kind of attempt that we've done. Now, usually I go out and video things myself to study them. That's my speciality, and I should say that I'm working with Nissan on their self-driving car, which unfortunately isn't very good. But the data I'm going to talk about today, I've actually got from YouTube. It's kind of quite an unusual place to get your data, but I think you'll see that even though data is a bit wild, we can really get some interesting stuff about how self-driving cars are driving on the road. So I'm going to use two main sources. One from this chap called J.J. Ricks, a really nice guy who's recorded 70 or so recordings of him driving with the Waymo car. And then I'm also going to look a little bit at the Tesla full self-driving, which is, if you're a bit of a driving geek, you might have already heard about that. I'm just going to jump in. I'm just going to drop you in, and I'm going to start by playing a video of the Waymo car from J.J. Ricks. Now this car has been tested in a suburb of Phoenix called Chandler, and you can see basically the setup there. There's no driver, which is kind of quite interesting. JJ's in the back here, and he has multiple cameras to video different things that are going on. This is the sort of visualization you get inside the car, and this is kind of the sort of videos you get. It's quite quiet suburb, quite good for testing self-driving cars, and you get this kind of data. Much of it's kind of boring. It's driving around like this, kind of seems to be tracking the road quite well. But in this clip, things go a bit wrong. What actually happens is that, I don't know if you can see on this visualization here, there's like traffic cones here. And the car just kind of gets stuck. It halts.
Oh, so how are you going to turn right when the right lane is closed off? What is the planner still wants to go in this lane?
So, and that's what happens is get stuck and cars start to pull up behind. You can see them in the mirror there and start driving around the car. Now, automatically, the car works out something's wrong, calls driver's assistance.
Support. Hey, I see there's some funky stuff going on here. Yeah.
So the car's stuck. Roadside assistance is coming. JJ's kind of okay, so just waiting there. Cars start to kind of drive around and get a bit more aggressive around the car. It's coming. Roadside assistance is coming. But then it gets even worse.
It's, okay. There we go.
Car actually looks like it is on its way.
I don't think it was supposed to do that. Oh no.
Actually, did it pause again? It looks like it did.
Oh, now it's blocking the entire road.
And it just stops there, and the police come, construction workers come, eventually roadside assistance comes. At that point, the car decides that it's going to make a getaway, and the roadside assistance guy has to chase after the car to get hold of it. And this is kind of what I'm interested in. I'm interested in this kind of thing where these self-driving cars are halting on the road at inappropriate points. And I would actually say that this is actually one of the biggest kind of problems that they have, is they, for various reasons, they stop in a safety critical way, and that causes kind of problems. And I contrast this with how humans stop on the road, because we don't just stop, we yield to each others. And one of my kind of big kind of questions is, can we teach self-driving cars to yield? Now, turns out sort of sociologists of the road, there are such a thing, would you believe it? They've been studying how we interact on the road for years, and this is some kind of work that's been looking a little bit at how, you'll know this when you're driving in Copenhagen and you've got cyclists. Who's going to go first, the car or the cyclist, or in this case, the pedestrian or the van? And you can see that we have this little thing where we kind of nudge and we move in little ways. You see the pedestrians going over to the left of the crosswalk there, showing that they see the van, but that they're going to go first. They're not going to yield for the van. Now, as I say, self-driving cars need to yield like humans, but they can't quite. Let me play you another clip. So this is the Waymo again, by the way. You can sort of see a little bit. I usually make these little comic strips to help you understand what's going on. You can see that the car kind of stops there, and that this dad, I presume, kind of waves the car on like this, yielding for the Waymo car.
Sorry, self-driving car. It sees you, so no worries about that.
So the driving here is perfectly safe, right? It's not dangerous, but remember, accidents come from the accumulation of small errors in driving. And what's going on here is basically the car, like the family are yielding for the car, but it just sits there. And then eventually JJ has to say, sorry, self-driving car. And it takes it 30 seconds to do this pretty basic kind of road interaction. And in fact, actually, it's worse than that. If you kind of look at this closely, you'll see that the mum actually starts to cross the road with her kids, and just at that point, the Waymo car starts to move again. So she stops and gets back onto the pavement now. This is kind of like a basic unit of road interaction, yielding, and actually more complicated forms of road interaction kind of use this as a kind of building block. And one of them is like what we call like a kind of four-way stop. If you've ever driven in the US, you'll know they don't have so many roundabouts. They have these four-way stops. And this is a different system. This is the Tesla FSD system. We're going to look a little bit at how it tries to get through this intersection. This thing is cars, it's not pedestrians. I've got a little counter up there, and that's how many cars go ahead of the Tesla when it should have went. So not the most impressive performance by, the company owned by the richest man in the world. But anyway, I don't want to be unfair. I mean, I think these technologies do amazing things, and they have done amazing stuff. But clearly they're still struggling with a little bit of this kind of social interaction on the road. And the problem here isn't just that the Tesla doesn't know to go when someone's yielding for, or vice versa. But if you actually kind of look at kind of in detail at how we drive, you'll notice that often we have these little kind of subtle interactions where we're both kind of moving at the same time, but we see who's slightly ahead of and who can make the claim to actually go. And you have to look at kind of, these things kind of slowed down to see why is, for example, this black car here, the fourth car, goes ahead of the Tesla, even though it actually slows down and waits for the Tesla. But the Tesla just doesn't take its chance and doesn't move. So this is kind of the thing I'm kind of looking at. I'm looking at halting when these self-driving cars stop in traffic, and I'm trying to contrast that with how we as human drivers or pedestrians or cyclists, how we stop in traffic. And I've got kind of two things I want to kind of pull out of this. First one, I'm kind of interested in how we can design self-driving cars. That's obviously kind of one kind of important thing. Can they understand these social interactions? But I'm also worried about this. When half or a third of cars on the road are self-driving, and they're driving this way, who's going to have to deal with that? Who's going to have to pay the cost of self-driving cars? It's not going to be the people who can afford those cars. It's going to be pedestrians and other road users. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see if this. I think we have time for one question.
You said that they start halting just in the middle of the road, right? The cars.
But sometimes not. They're like obviously some of them.
What if they lack of sensors? Because I know that Tesla famously rid of their radar sensors because it was too expensive, and they crashed with 3 or 4 motorcycles fatally because they didn't recognize it. Because now they only rely on computer vision and parallaxes to calculate distance. So might there be a sensor issue, or is it like it's
Yeah, it's like driving's one of those things when you start picking up the onion layers. It's so difficult, and even actually just seeing where other cars are on the road is a kind of big problem. But I think that the thing that I've been kind of looking at is so most of the collisions these cars get into are when cars go into the back of them because they get impatient. So why are you not moving? And then they think they're moving, and then they go into the back of them. So actually, I think at least the Waymo's got these kind of this LiDAR system, so it's actually pretty good at seeing what's around. I think you're right about the Tesla, though. It still struggles a little bit with seeing fleshy bodies on the road.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.